all the different lives you have ever lived or will ever live in any dimension of experience all exist, in a sense, now, simultaneously. They all have their own reality. They are all a part of the you, the whole you, the total you that you are. But in choosing to experience a fragment of your consciousness in a linear fashion, then you relegate that portion of your consciousness, so to speak, to experience that totality in a step-by-step linear fashion, one after another, rather than all at once, which is the perspective of the non-physical consciousness that you also are, which you colloquially refer to as the oversoul. The oversoul, in that sense, can be viewed, as we have discussed many times, as the projectionist, and the lines can be viewed as the film strip, as you call it, each frame on the film representing perhaps a different life or a different moment in one life. Now, to the portion of the film that exists within the film itself from frame to frame, it only knows the frame it is in at any given moment, has what you call a memory of frames that have gone by, and in that sense only a dim understanding of projections or predictions of the frame coming up based on past continuity. But the projectionist sees the whole film all at once and knows that all the frames exist right now, from beginning to end, as you say. And only the characters on the film are isolated to the particular frame in which they exist, until the next frame creates the illusion of movement and change and continuation and momentum. This is a similar analogy to physical reality. Continuity is simply your projection, your illusion in that sense. Your rate of flow, of transformation, of creating a series of different nows in a different format, in a different shape. Even from what you call a movement here to here may actually be the creation of many millions of different realities in between to create the illusion of continuous movement from one point to another. No one really moves anywhere. No one really goes anywhere. Motion, in that sense, is completely a true illusion. The idea is that you simply recreate the reality over and over and over again, discontinuously, now, to create the idea, the sensation of physical reality that defines its coordinates by space and time. Now, the idea also is that we have discussed that you, since you exist only now, only in the present, experientially, actually create the past as well as the future from the present. Because now is the only time in which you actually ever really exist. The idea of memory, whether it be something in your particular present life in the past, or whether it be the idea and notion of a particular past life in the linear, let us say, film of your existence, all of that memory is still created in the present. When you create memory, you are not actually, in a sense, thinking in the past. You are thinking of an idea called the past, but you are creating that memory in the present. All creation takes place in the present. Always. It is always, to put it very simply, now. And it is never any other time, but now. That is the only experiential time that exists. Now, this visual aid can show to some degree, by a mechanical analogy, how the idea of the simultaneousness of all your lives can be interpreted in a linear fashion in the physical reality you are used to experiencing. But remember, this is simply an analogy. For this particular visual aid is, in a sense, simply a two-dimensional presentation of a three-dimensional representation of a fourth-dimensional concept of an infinitely interdimensional structure. So, while many different degrees of dimensionality are removed from this particular mechanical visual aid, it will serve to get across the basic idea of the mechanism. Are you ready? Yes. Very good. Now, what you will first observe is simply a representation of either, now you can take this either way, many different lives, each one represented by a hexagonal format of 6 arrows pointing in 6 directions, leading to every other hexagonal arrow pattern. So each of those can be a life. Each of those can be a different version of you in a different dimension. Past, present, future, alternate reality, call it what you will, it does not matter. It is a holographic representation of the simultaneous existence of every single probable reality and possible way that you can exist and do exist on every dimension there is to exist upon. It is referred to as a holographic matrix. Holographic in the sense that every point in that sense, in one sense, is equal to every other point. From any point, you can proceed in any direction, and in a sense, all points connect up to all other points. In other words, each spot contains the information of the whole, and basically is a microcosm of the whole. Now, this represents the view that your non-physical oversoul has when it looks at all the different lives that you have simultaneously going on. It simply looks and says, all right, 1934, 1987, 1992, 2500, all these ideas are all simultaneous to the oversoul. They are all extensions of the oversoul, simultaneous extensions in much the same way that your fingers are simultaneous extensions of your hand. Each finger has independence in a sense and represents a different idea, but they all lead back to the hand, are all part of one idea. Now, if you will apply or hold up the karmic overlay template, what you can see is a symbol, a strip that contains a particular idea. This is the representation of physical reality, linear space-time, with arrows moving only in one direction. The central arrow represents your idea of now. The 2 arrows, in that sense, on what you would call your left represent past, and the 2 on what you would call your right represent the future. In this indication, it is simply indicated past -1, past -2, future +1, future +2, to indicate different either moments in one life or different lifetimes. You can take it either way. This chart can be used to represent whole lives or moments within one life. You follow along so far? Now, if you overlay the idea of the karmic template upon the holographic matrix, you will understand more precisely that karma is simply, literally, pattern recognition. That is all it is. It is a pattern overlay that you decide represents the present life you are living. You thus, by overlaying that particular format or pattern or template upon the present idea you now decide to be, determine with that overlay what connections you have in the past and what connections you have in the future. For it illuminates a particular set of arrows in other simultaneous existence, both now that allows you to call it the past, and simultaneous existence that now allows you to call it the future. Because you are looking through the filter of the overlay, you now only see these simultaneous lifetimes in a linear fashion. Before, now, after. Because that is the definition of physical reality and the definition of the karmic overlay. It is a pattern that you impose upon yourself. Now, this is why, in having chosen that particular pattern, you can see mechanically that you have determined which simultaneous other lives will be represented as past lives and future lives to this life you are creating. Angle the karmic template. Now, you can say that this is perhaps another idea, another lifestyle, another personality that you chose to be. Understand how being that other personality still allows there to be the bleed-through of the holographic matrix to create still the illusion of a temporal momentum, but now you have a different set of past lives, a different set of future lives, and the new person that you are literally determines the fact that you will then relate to a completely different past a completely different future. So, the idea of having this life now and then assuming that perhaps you die and reincarnate doesn't necessarily mean that the life you're having now will literally be directly connected to the next life you have. You can actually diversify very radically by altering the idea sufficiently so that the next person you are will actually have a different past life than the one you're living now. Understand the mechanics and simply see that the lineage always follows suit. And also, if you take this as an analogy for even the moments in one life, then the change in direction can represent changes in the patterns or ideas that you are being at any given moment. And you can see that by a change in the pattern, you change the feedback all the way back and all the way forward and create literally within one life a different past, a different future for the vibrational frequency you have dialed yourself to at this particular moment. And also it shows you how in the present, what you call the center point, small changes in direction create large changes in the past and large changes in the future, because you can see the sweep of the arc is a mechanical analogy that a small divergence of pattern in the present will compound itself both in the future and in the past to create large variations. You understand the angle of incidence? The idea, therefore, is to recognize that you do not have to create overwhelmingly obvious changes in your present to create overwhelmingly obvious changes in your past and your future. A small divergence in any direction, in any frequency in your present will manifest as a widely different idea or outcome in what you call the future, and a widely different idea and outcome in what you call the past, because as you understand past, you have based your experience on what will happen, on what has happened. This is the illusion you have created. So simply understand that if you change yourself even minutely in the present, and that small change creates a great divergence in the outcome in your future, then it, by definition, there must be a large divergence in your past to have initiated the type of foundation that would create such a large divergence in your future. You understand? The idea simply is to recognize that you are multidimensional, multidirectional, and any subtle change you make within any one life, or any change you make from life to life, will connect you to a whole other series of incidents and events that have to do with the life you are living at the present. So when we talk about the idea of what your past lives were, that does not necessarily mean that in the next life you have, if you have one, that you will have the same lineage. And it does not necessarily mean that the quote-unquote past life you were has the same future life that you consider yourself to be. They branch out multidimensionally, holographically, in all dimensions at once. And you can take any route, any path, and they will all be real, all directly connected to you. Whatever idea you are being at the moment determines utterly any other ideas that are capable of being perceived as being connected to you now, whether they are in what you call the past or the future. You are the dial, and the dial for your reality is always in the present with you. It is never in the past. It is never in the future. It may, in your terms, affect what you call the past and affect what you call the future, but that control and that malleability is with you in the present. You all follow along? Does this mechanical analogy illuminate some of the ideas for you that we have discussed? We can go into this perhaps further at another time, or perhaps according to anything you might specifically wish to apply to this idea. But for now, it will do, and it will sink into your consciousness on whatever level it needs to. Thank you very much, assistant. And at this timing, in exchange for your willingness to allow us to share with you the reflections of the ideas that you all are, we will ask you now, how may I serve you?